Hello everyone and welcome to the inaugural episode of the Growing Pains podcast. The goal of this podcast is to discuss my personal journey with life beyond school. This is my first year without being in school in any manner, so it's going to be weird, and my overall hope of making this podcast is that I can learn from you all and you all can learn from my experiences. And also for this just to be an avenue for me to discuss the growing pains of life beyond school. But we have officially made it 1 month without school. It's been weird, but also really nice. I do not miss homework one bit. After graduation, as a bit of a woohoo, you're done with school celebration, my girlfriend and I traveled to Ireland for a week, and we had a wonderful time exploring Dublin and Cork. Also, Kiki's here now, so I hope that you guys can hear her little purrs. The rest of June has been pretty chill, and I have come to the realization that I have unfortunately been replacing the stress of homework deadlines with YouTube deadlines. That's why I haven't posted anything on this channel in a month, but my gaming channel has been popping off. I've been posting those videos regularly. As soon as I fully realized what exactly I was doing and why I was feeling like just not good every day, I went into my Notion, which is where I'd organized my entire life, and completely revamped my upload schedule. I knew months back when I was creating this schedule that it was gonna have to be reworked, but getting to the point of actually doing it was hard, but actually doing it and then coming to accept that you were putting way too much pressure on yourself to do way too much did make things a lot easier, and I'm feeling better now. As far as other general updates go, of course, as expected, my body fully crapped out and I got sick, and I'm still kind of sick, and it's been over a month now of being just kind of a little sick and not feeling my best, which has been so much fun to say the least. Yes, I have been on antibiotics. Yes, they worked temporarily. And yes, the sickness is back again. And I must ask you all for your forgiveness because I did very briefly, but not seriously, but still very briefly, consider a master's program in Irish history while in Ireland, but instead just found some courses and textbooks I can complete and read on my own time instead. My ancestors are from Ireland, and being in Ireland just made me want to learn so much more. And my brain always says the best way to learn about something is through academia, so of course I just naturally looked into online master's programs. This was a very, very brief research session, and the entire time I was saying, no, don't do this, you're being silly. During that process, I reminded myself that there are other ways to learn about things other than just classic academia. So I'm almost glad that I had that desire briefly. But yes, it is gone, and no, I'm not going to be doing a master's. No school for 5 years, no school for 5 years. And one final update before we get into the meat of today's episode. I am currently in the process of trying to reformat where I get my dopamine from, because for a long time it's been good grades and cheap dopamine sources like online shopping and doom scrolling. This past month I've dipped my toes into writing fiction again, and doing that as well as engaging in other creative pursuits, and creating instead of consuming has been really, really nice. My brain still very much craves the easy dopamine. Like for instance, today I was on TikTok for over an hour for the first time in like a month just because I wanted the easy dopamine, and I was also procrastinating recording this podcast. So safe to say this process is going to be a slow one, but I'll be sure to keep you guys updated next month on my dopamine reformatting updates, as well as whether or not I get any more desires to pursue a master's degree, because I'm willing to assume that I'm going to dip my toes in my mind into both of those things again, especially as August comes nearer, but I will persevere, and we will carry on in doing the things that are better for me, and that is not relying on cheap dopamine and creating rather than consuming, and not being in academia or looking into academia. My girlfriend gave me the book The Defining Decade as part of my graduation gift, and I started reading it this month, and my goal now is to read each section, there are 3 of them, being work, love, and mind/body, month by month for the next 3 months, and discuss my thoughts and musings in the first 3 installments of this podcast. And who knows, maybe things I read will be able to apply to my own or your experience. So the author of this book is a social psychologist who focuses her work mostly on 20-somethings, so people from 20 to 29, and her work focuses on that transitional life period. She has a lot of opinions on what you should be doing when you're in your 20s, and as someone who is in their early 20s, seeing what other people have to say about what I should be doing with my time is interesting. I have always been very stubborn, and had a clear vision for what I want to do with my life, and things have definitely gotten a little bit more nebulous as I've gotten older, but it's still unnatural for me to listen to someone's unsolicited advice being like, you should do this with your life, and accept it with ease, even if I know that they have good intentions or if they have really solid advice. Sometimes I just don't want to listen to them and I want to do things my way. But I feel like that can be typical for a lot of stubborn people, so rise up if you're like me. Anyhow, so the author broaches the subject of being a 20-something with this sense of understanding for the first half of the introduction, but at one point there was a noticeable turn for me where I felt myself go, oh no, is this gonna be all holier than thou? And thankfully that turned around by the end of the introduction, but I was scared for a second there. So if you're thinking of picking this book up and then you immediately get like turned off, know that it does take a step back and it isn't holier than thou for that much of the book. One of the first ideas that the author brings up in the work section of the book is the importance of identity capital. So identity capital is essentially the skills that you gain via experiences that you can then bring into the workforce. The author discusses what she did during her early 20s, being working with Outward Bound, which is kind of like an outdoorsy company where she worked with a variety of clientele ranging from kids in the system to Wall Street CEOs, and she would take them on tours like kayaking down rivers and exploring mountains and everything like that. I feel like I did a lot of honing of my identity capital in college with my extracurriculars, Student Honor Council and Literary Magazine, for instance. And although I don't feel like I've been working on my identity capital this past year, I suppose I have been working on my scripting, filming, and editing skills. I guess that I'm gaining experiences in less conventional ways, or I guess more 21st century Gen Z technology, social media ways. But with the introduction of the concept of identity capital, the author goes into her thesis of the work section of the book. Her argument is, don't waste your time or laze around in your 20s. You need to get to work now, because all the work that you do now is going to pay off in your 30s and 40s and beyond. And if you instead decide to wait in your 20s and to just like have fun, then you're going to feel super far behind and actually be super far behind. She discusses this idea of experimenting with work while you're in your 20s, which isn't groundbreaking by any means, but it is a good reminder. Your 20s do matter. It's like that old adage about how saving less but starting earlier will always lead to more economic growth than a person who starts saving more later on in life. If you invest in yourself and your future now, rather than waiting around for future you to do it, because all future you is going to want to do is be annoyed that present you left all that hard work for them, then you're going to find yourself in a better situation in the future. And that message, while true, does come off as a little annoying, because if you're not going to get to experiment and have fun in your 20s when you're young and ideally your body is working at the best that it is, when are you going to do it? But also, if you want to live a life where you like settle down, have a house, get kids, get married, all these things, not necessarily in that order that I said, then you do need to start working in your 20s now to build that life for yourself, because time does go fast and your life does go fast. But once you have kids, you should ideally be rooted with your kids. You're more fixed. You can't really go and travel in Europe for a summer or a year or something like that if you want to do that. But the author really argues that like your 20s are your time to build the scaffolding, but also when else in your life do you get to just kind of fuck around for a little while? If not in your 20s, then what? Once all your kids are out of the nest and you're an empty nester, what if your body isn't as good by then? What if things in the world aren't as good by then? So I just had this very drastic push-pull feeling in my head as I was reading this, because yes, I probably am following the advice that this author is giving to a T. Yes, I did pick the stable job option right out of college, literally right out of college, and I have career prospects because of it. I'm learning skills and making connections and doing everything that I should be doing to make my 30s that much easier, but I don't think that necessarily my way of doing things or this way of doing things is the only or best way to do things. I think that if you do want to try and pursue the arts or do something less conventional, your 20s is the time to do it. A lot of times the advice felt very narrow-minded and one-track mind, because it works for a lot of people, but it might not work for everyone. Although it is conventional and works for a lot of people, sometimes what works for everyone isn't going to bring everyone happiness. There is a portion at the end of the work section where someone says, I didn't want to do what everyone else was doing, but then I ended up doing it, and then I realized why everyone did it, because it was stable and made my life easier. But just because everyone does it doesn't necessarily mean that everyone has to do it. That's all to to say, I don't agree with everything that this author is saying. If you want to use some time in your 20s to just kind of fuck around, go for it. This is your time to do it. Hopefully your body is the best that it's ever gonna be. You may not have a lot of money, but you have time and drive, and things aren't rooting you into one place. So now is the time to just kind of fuck around. But to play devil's advocate, if you do want to follow the traditional path of getting a stable job, saving up for your future, making the steps now so that you could build a family and settle down, absolutely don't feel bad about doing that in your 20s. For some people, fucking around in their 20s is the time to do it and is the best time to do it, and for other people, it's not, and that's totally fine. You shouldn't feel bad about living a more mundane or stable life. Social media and influencers have completely altered our perception of what is a normal life, especially in your 20s, because most influencers are in their 20s. And just because some rich influencer is able to go on all these trips and do all these crazy wild things and gets all the newest technology and is constantly buying new things, doesn't necessarily mean that that is realistic or is what you should strive for. I truly believe that there's a lot more beauty in mundanity than some viewpoints would rather make you believe. Well, that was a tangent. Another idea that the author mentions is the importance of weak ties. Weak ties are essentially any relationships that aren't strong ones already, and the author emphasizes that it's your weak ties that will actually be able to reveal new opportunities to you, because your inner circle, or your urban tribe, as the author refers to it, will likely be comprised of like-minded, homogenous people, but the only way to expose yourself to new job opportunities, new romantic prospects, and different life paths is to learn about them from people unlike you, usually from your weak ties. When I was still in the job hunting phase during my senior year of college, I had a conversation with a gentleman who worked in human resources who had actually gotten his job through my father. We discussed what jobs in human resources and in the legal field would look like, and at the end of the meeting, he said he would put my name out there to people he knew and pass anything along to me that came up. So by engaging with one weak tie, my name and resume had been passed along to a network of weak ties. I ended up getting my first full-time job out of college through a random job listing app, but who knows, maybe in another timeline that weak tie was what would have gotten me a job. That's all to say, weak ties may be weak, but man, can they be impactful. So if you're currently in the job hunting phase or looking for a new opportunity in some manner, just be open to engaging in your weak ties. Make a phone call, engage with people on LinkedIn. You never know. A lot of times people get jobs just by being the one who makes a phone call or being the one who messages. So don't be afraid to take that step and engage with the weak tie. There were 3 quotes in the book that really stuck out to me, and I'm going to read them here now because, man, there is a certain terror that goes along with saying, "My life is up to me." It is scary to realize that you can't just wait around, that no one can really rescue you, and that you, and only you, just have to do something. That was on page 34. Although I feel like I know what I want to do and I'm happy with what I'm doing currently, it is still daunting to know that everything is up to me now. Obviously, I have my family and my girlfriend and friends and things like that to, like, be a support system, but, like, it's just up to me, and that's daunting. Nice, but daunting. Another one was, when we make choices, we open ourselves up to hard work and failure and heartbreak. So sometimes it feels easier not to know, not to choose, and not to do. That was from page 41. I very much am a perfectionist, and I am now applying that to my creative pursuits. So in this past month, when I wasn't uploading any YouTube videos, I wasn't not working on YouTube videos. I was working on them and then being unhappy with how things were going, or being unsure of how to go about doing the things that I want to do, because I don't have the knowledge of how to make things turn out how I want them to turn out. And I mentioned it earlier, but even today, I was nervous about starting to record this podcast. I've never recorded a podcast before, and doing so is scary because I could fuck everything up. The way that I get myself to do things a lot of the times is I just, like, shut off my brain and just do it, because if I am not actively thinking about it, the anxiety about things not being perfect can't really say anything because it's too quiet. So I'm gonna give myself a little pat on the back for actually doing something and doing the thing that was scary, but doing it anyways. And this last quote is something that I feel like I just have to carry with me going forward. It was from a conversation between the author and a client in her role as a psychologist, and the quote is as follows: "I feel like such a failure," Talia continued. "In school, there was a formula. It was pretty easy to figure out what to do and where you stood. You'd know you were living up to your potential. Sometimes I think I should just go back to graduate school for my PhD because it would sound better and I could get A's again. I don't know how to get an A in my 20s. I feel like I am failing for the first time." And that was from page 44. While I don't feel like I am failing at life, it is going to be weird going forward and not having a grade for things and knowing that there isn't necessarily a right answer or a right way to do things. There are just different ways to do things. Academic validation is absolutely one hell of a drug and can absolutely supplement your need for validation in other realms of your life, but it doesn't mean that it's the only way to get validated, and it doesn't mean that not getting a grade or getting immediate feedback in other realms of your life doesn't necessarily mean that you're doing bad. The last portion of the work section of this book talked about social media. The author's message is essentially don't compare yourself to others, especially when they're doing something that you don't really have an interest in, even if you feel like you should. I'm very much doing what past me has always wanted to do. I finally have time to play video games, read, write, spend time with friends and loved ones and my cats, and just do things that bring me joy without the worry of academics looming in the background. But sometimes I find myself thinking that I ought to be doing something else, but I really just need to remind myself that I'm right where I belong right now. Things may change, but this is where I am, and I'm pretty content with that. I will say a lot of this section did kind of feel like a parent was lecturing me at times. Get a good paying job where you can grow. Don't trifle yourself with learning about yourself or pursuing unconventional career paths. Start building your career now. It absolutely makes sense. Like I said, this is solid advice for surviving in the world we live in. I just wonder how different things could be if we weren't forced to reside within this capitalistic hellscape. That is all for a reflection on the first section of the defining decade. Next month, we'll be looking at the love section of the book. To wrap up, just wanted to share a few things that helped with the growing pains that I felt this month. Like I said, my brain did latch onto YouTube videos and those deadlines being the new looming deadlines in my brain, and the way that I was able to get around that and circumvent feeling like crap for not doing everything that I wanted to do was just reminding myself that, hey, this is your own art, and you're more than allowed to create your own timeline for it as such. And also just reminding myself that this is supposed to be fun. And when I don't let myself get caught up in the deadlines and the minutia of it all and not knowing everything that I don't know yet, it becomes fun again. I expect this next month is going to be quite interesting. July is usually the month when I think about going back to school, so this is the first July that I won't be doing that. So we'll see if my brain tries to go back to that headspace of we gotta gear up for school again, or if it will chill and if the school worm is dead. I hope that you guys enjoyed this first episode of the Growing Pains podcast. If you have learned anything of particular interest, whether it be about transitioning to life beyond school, anything in that realm, or if you have learned anything just interesting, like if you are interested in the history of candle making and you learned cool facts about that, please feel free to comment anything like that down below. I love learning random tidbits and facts. And with that, we are going to wrap up this episode here. I hope that you guys have a wonderful July. I look forward to reading all of your comments about things that you guys have learned, and stay on the lookout for upcoming videos and next month's podcast in just a few weeks. Bye-bye!